tell us in the comments. And if you have any questions tonight, feel free to get involved. I'll let David do his introduction first, though, so you know what the topic of content is going to be.
Excellent stuff. So hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name's David Dewey. I'm the founder and CEO of a recruitment technology / educational technology business based in York. So joining IsoNation today to talk about my experiences of COVID-19 to date and the impact it's had on my business, and hopefully share some insights as to how it's going to play out for us.
Lovely. Thank you. So just tell us, what is Shortlister? How did Shortlister come about, and what is it?
Interesting story. So I suppose the headline for us is we help organizations and people interview better. So came about as a candidate myself. So experiencing the graduate recruitment market many moons ago, and observing how competitive and how it could be made more efficient. So ultimately what we do is bring the interview process online. So we revolutionize the way people are interviewed, or certainly did back then. It seems to be the new normal for us now, interviewing online, whether that's via a medium like this. What we do is kind of facilitate that first round interview, typically replacing the telephone interview within an employer. And we do that for lots of really credible brands. We work with the likes of Aston Martin, MasterCard, businesses where there's lots of applicants, or there's large geographies in where they're recruiting. So businesses that are recruiting overseas.
And how long ago did you guys?
Yes,
Shortly.
Sure. So founded 2014. So certainly when we brought the first product to market was late 2014. So we're 6 years in now. It's been an interesting journey.
And so, oh gosh, you must be, I mean, surely you've seen an impact on your clients immediately. We normally start our sort of Leaders Insight interviews with what was your OMG moment? Was that, oh my God moment? You realized this was pretty massive. What was that for you guys?
Yeah, I suppose as a business, I think I should first say that as a business, we're probably well placed in terms of what we do to support businesses during this climate. So, and I suppose, where we're placed geographically as well. I don't know if any of the audience knows this, but the first sort of confirmed case of COVID was based in York, so it's pretty close to home for us. So I'd probably say late Jan, early Feb. We started to see the seeds of this, and I think the oh my God moment was where a large international client of ours started inquiring about business continuity, so looking for assurances that we could continue to supply should this escalate. And I think that's the moment where we went, this is serious. We were still finding our feet there. Perhaps that client had an interest over in Asia where things were a little bit further along than they were here, and they knew how it was going to disrupt. So yeah, I think it was we saw the seeds of it early on. I think the OMG moment was certainly where we were seeing how serious our clients were taking it.
Yeah, sure. And what were your continuity plans enough to quell their fears?
Yeah, I think so. As a technology business, we have a distributed team anyway. We're pretty well placed in the scheme of things. We're quite well accustomed to working from home or working from different locations. So in terms of our setup, we can provide all of our clients assurances that even a pandemic isn't going to disrupt our ability to service our clients, and we've thankfully been able to uphold that during this period.
And what sort of things have you had to put in place to have you had any impact at all? Has it been smooth running?
Yeah, I think from an operational standpoint, obviously there are adjustments that we've made to staff working from home. The way that we manage sort of operations has changed a little bit, and in terms of, you go through that period of particularly for when you've got team members of various sort of seniority, you particularly when you're giving staff a lot of freedom to work from home, you have to get over that sort of trust stage where you're just checking everyone's doing what they should be doing, because they're not in eyesight. So yeah, there's been some changes to the way that staff are reporting on their productivity. Operationally, it's very much business as usual for us. I think for many of your audience members, the biggest impact it is having to us and everyone is our ability to grow as a business. While we're 6 years old, we're still pretty young, and I've still got a lot of growth within us. So the frustration shared by me and the team is our ability to establish new relationships.
Right, it's the same for everybody right now as well. People that have just seen that full stop in everything, whether it's your trade or whether it's just your business development side of things. It's interesting you mentioned the seniority piece there. Is there been anything between your younger members of the team and your more experienced members of the team? Have you seen some nice moments there?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I make that reference because certainly the more senior members of the team have obviously had or experienced or have been trusted to work remotely for more time and have developed working strategies. I think a lot of the commentary I've read in this period about staying productive while working from home is about having that structure, those boundaries. Whereas more junior members of the team, they've probably never encountered anything like this, and businesses are perhaps a little bit more cautious about giving them those freedoms, so they don't have it's how they respond to those freedoms. So we've made certain changes within the business. Certainly there's more structure around how we communicate, when we communicate, what we're communicating about. We're encouraging more sort of self-reflection on staff's on their own productivity levels, basically, so they can identify sort of daily, weekly as to whether or not things are slipping, because the same indicators aren't there. They're not surrounded by other team members to kind of benchmark themselves against.
Sure. And it's really interesting because everybody said, everybody's fed back the same sort of thing, this cultural piece when it comes to working from home, and how you keep that moving forward, how you keep your motivation happening, but also how you keep that upskilling happening with that. You're sharing a desk with somebody who's got 20 years experience.
Sure.
You can't do that when you're on the other end of the screen. That's interesting though, because I'm just looking through what we would normally ask on our question list, because we have got a sort of format here. But I mean, the things that you're talking about, what have you seen in terms of your clientele as an impact as well? Have you seen an increase in activity on use of the platform, or what's happening in that recruitment sphere at the moment?
Yeah, so we've got sort of two markets of interest to the business. One is recruitment, so obviously the relationships we have with employers. The other is education, and when I say education, I'm talking about higher education. So I suppose the space that we operate in is early years recruitment, so graduates, first and second jobs. So it's really interesting how that's played out. Recruitment is frozen, certainly in where we operate as a business. With large employers looking to bring, fill development roles, essentially entry-level development roles, the brakes are on. And certainly the commentary that I see in the industry, that's across the board, outside of perhaps the areas where we operate. Uncertainty has meant that vacancies are being pulled. Until such time we have certainty, I don't see that while staff certainly are furloughed, I think it's appropriate for many businesses to be advertising new vacancies. So that's one side of it. Recruitment, the clients that we have, so particularly pharmaceutical clients, obviously they're in a massive up curve. If you're lucky enough to be servicing, your last mile delivery type businesses, then you're going to see an up curve. I think for everyone else, it's a challenging period, and we have interests obviously in other markets, and I think that's reflected across the board. I don't think there's any, you're going to be speaking to anybody that can report otherwise from a recruitment point of view. There are still opportunities out there. We're certainly advertising vacancies at the moment. I don't think there's a huge amount of movement. I don't think there's a huge amount of people looking. I don't think there's a huge amount of vacancies available. But yeah, there are still businesses that are looking for great talent. I suppose then from the education side of things, the university world is, the fact is there's hundreds of thousands of students who've paid tuition fees and expecting, have a service expectation of those universities, whether or not that's physically or virtually. So they must continue, they must adapt to deliver on their commitment. So, as a business, we've certainly seen more interest from universities in utilizing our solution. Whether or not they've got the ability to procure our services, that's interesting. We're probably too early to tell, but there are a lot of restrictions around procuring new services and prioritization of those services. Given the sheer demand on looking to technology to enable business as usual to continue.
You mentioned the uncertainty piece there. I mean, which is like we're all still in this limbo, aren't we? Really, and even I mean, I'm not going to even go to the procurement side of things, but in the limbo that we're sat in now, when do you think the likelihood of that certainty coming, and also in the job market, is that not? Are we likely to see a glut of jobs coming up as people? There's going to be a pool of talent available, surely in the months. So that's going to mean a lot of movement in that market, surely.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think certainly from our experiences at the moment, we are attracting as a business, a caliber of talent that we perhaps wouldn't normally. I think there's a lot of good people who are going to be uncertain about their future, or even worse, may have already been let go from their organization for reasons out of their control. There's going to be a lot of good talent in the market. We work, as a country, we've had the lowest levels of unemployment sustained for a long time. So, some businesses will welcome that influx of good people into the business, into the recruitment market. But yeah, I think certainly, I'm probably no wiser than anyone else on this audience, other than reading the doom and gloom that's coming out of the media, that people are letting large swathes of people let go. I think maybe if we get some certainty over the next few months or few weeks, ideally, you may see businesses, change those decisions they've made to let staff go and try and retain that talent. I've certainly heard commentary from larger businesses that who were around sort of last recession, commenting on the mistakes they made, letting large swathes of talent go, and certainly doing everything they can to try and protect those people as much as possible.
Yeah, well, it's a costly process, getting people in trained up, buying into what it is you do, becoming loyal to you as well. And absolutely. The work, keeping them passionate about it, keeping them motivated. It's not something that just, happens. It takes time and it takes commitment. So yeah, I mean, I totally understand that, and I can see why. We all felt it a bit. We all felt it in 2008, didn't we? So it was a shame, and hopefully that doesn't happen again. And you still didn't give me an idea on that uncertainty piece there. When are you thinking we're going to see certainty? Actually, I'll give you some stats to help you. So our survey that we were running throughout April, that's given us an impression that up to 60% of the people currently furloughed will be reactivated. just is what people. We had over 100 people take part in the survey, and that was their general feedback. The most affected are going to be hospitality, leisure, and events.
Yep.
And there was some. I mean, have you seen that survey result? Actually, I think I sent a breakdown to you, but it's interesting. It's interesting what you can see in there and what people are saying. But obviously, it's a very small number of what still we have absolutely no idea. We don't know.
I think this morning certainly there was a little bit more positive sentiment in the news around, obviously, retailers opening back up, or certainly having clarity as to when they can open up. I think they'll take a view of what footfall looks like. But yeah, there's no getting away from the leisure tours, leisure hospitality, taking the biggest hit, and probably going to take the longest time to recover. I suppose, effectively I work in a technology space, in a cloud-based technology which enables remote communication. So I think there is a bit of a bubble that I operate in, but I remain pretty positive, and I'd certainly be looking north of 60%, looking to return to work in the next couple of months would be my feelings. I think that's the best you're going to get out of me.
I think that's good though. I'm the same. I'm certainly it's just the fact that we're in limbo. When we're in limbo and nobody's got anything to talk about, they've got to make things up to talk about. Right now, we don't know, and we know which are being affected immediately, which are currently, we can guess which are going to be affected heavily in the ongoing. But then we forget things that we can't forget, that the high streets we're in a bad situation before, if we're talking about the high streets, and that world is already evolving, and actually this might be a catalyst for more efficient consumerism in the future, maybe. And there may be some, I do think there will be some casualties in this pandemic, not entire sectors or anything like that, but I do think there's going to be some casualties. But I do think that we're going to be okay as well. We'll have to wait and see. I hope that. Oh, that was the other thing I was going to say, is that our survey, 3 out of 5 people predict 2 to 3 years to return to normal.
Okay.
Give you on that stat, but I think hopefully it might be lower than that. The problem is we're talking about two different things. We're talking about, when people are talking about the doom and gloom, we're talking about the impact on the economy and the recovery of the economy, and we're also talking about the debt that we now have in place, which, let's be honest, is going to be in place for a few generations yet. But that doesn't mean to say that we can't be upping and running again as quickly as possible.
Fingers crossed. Fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed.
And I'd probably say that, I think there's a lot of positives that have come out of this, which are overlooked. I mean, the innovation that we've seen in, both inside the realms of the technology industry and outside of it, and how quickly we've responded as a nation to maintain business as usual, or survive businesses. Looking at independent food retailers who have launched sort of delivery services. That's what will help us prevail. The SME community, they're entrepreneurs, they're innovators. We will adapt. It'll take us a while to get back to where we were, but we will absolutely get there.
I have no doubt. And actually, there's one thing I want to touch back on just quickly, to jump right back before we go into your predictions of the future of how you've reacted. You touched on communication earlier, and you said you changed how you communicated. You're communicating more clearly, more efficiently, and more regularly. What does that mean? Does that mean you're having team calls morning, noon, and afternoon?
Yeah. Not quite noon, but certainly stand-ups. So starting the day, ending the day, which I think kicking off the day is helpful. That there isn't that boundary. There isn't that clear boundary from walking out of the front door of your house, making your way to work. So that stand-up call serves for us as kind of that start point, get into work mode. And the end of play is kind of the end boundary, to wrap up what we've achieved in the day, because it's difficult. It can all blur into one. We wish people well for the weekend, and the response is, well, is it a weekend? I don't know. So putting those boundaries in place. The point I make about more focused communication is, those calls are they checking in calls, they're reporting calls. I think the purpose of those calls, that we have more of a focus around what we've been able to achieve, what we're setting out to achieve. We're missing that general chit chat, and that across the desk. And certainly Fridays, end of the weeks or start of the weeks, we're making a conscious effort to speak to each of the team members, find out how they're feeling, what they've been up to, how they're adapting to this, both professionally and the home life. So there is a real focus or structure to those communications, and I think people, certainly staff members, are like that as well, because it's a bit isolating, hence the title of this. You are isolated, and you've got limited opportunities to speak to people outside of your usual sort of circles. So I think having that forum to share, it has been welcomed by the staff. They don't see it as much as of a chore that they're reporting, that it's basically a support network.
Yeah, because it's interesting you say there with the relationship building piece. I mean, those little bits, and having the conversations across the table and all that. When you've got people that are coming in, as we have graduates, those conversations, they're the integral part. They're where you're getting that little bit of gold information, and really getting a chance to tap into somebody else's experience. And with that in mind, and talking of the working from home, what are your predictions for the future? Do you think we're going to see? We had all this talk early on of £600,000 a year offices being given up and all this sort of thing, and people with hundreds and hundreds of employees never having to go back to the offices again. We have seen Twitter and some people make a move that way already. Do you think we're going to see a mass movement that way?
Yes, absolutely. So I can't see us as a business returning to 5 days a week in the office. I think for partly the motivations of the leaders within the business, but yeah, I think this has been a fantastic opportunity for everyone to take stock of what they want from their lives, or for them, if they're a business owner, what they want from their business. And back to the point I made earlier about there's some real positives for me, and I can only comment on me. It's given us it's given me the ability to take a step back, look at what we're doing, question why we're doing certain things, and one of those questions is why we have this I say it's an unwritten rule that we have to be in the office 5 days a week. We have quite a flexible working pattern, but I think we need to be more explicit with that there isn't an expectation that you're in the office 5 days a week. Everybody's proven that they're capable of being productive working from home, and that's 5 days a week. So I think the reason why we have it's taken an event like this to get us to that point is boils down to trust. I think that a lot of businesses perhaps didn't have the tools to be able to see what to give them the confidence that their employees were doing what they needed to do. We absolutely do. We can track pretty much every interaction with an email or a call. Not that we bother to do that. I think there's something wrong if you need to do that. But business for us has continued, and I'd say there has been moments where we've been more productive, certainly from my perspective, been more productive working from home. So if you take that, the trust has been established. Some businesses will have seen an uplift like us in productivity levels. And yeah, obviously you're going to question the expense of an office, and is it the critical piece of the business that you once thought it is? No, I don't think it is. So yeah, we'll certainly be adopting a hybrid structure, both in the phasing back in, but beyond.
Mm-hmm. Very interesting. And how do you think that hybrid's going to look? Because I assume that we're going to have sort of, we've had lots of conversations around this, and I assume we're going to have sort of a core working hours at some point in the day, and then you kind of fit around that as you can. But certain people have to be online together. A couple of hours of the day is, maybe it's your lunchtime or just after your lunch, and there's those core hours where everybody's working, catching up, having your check-ins, because how do you do that if everybody's working on staggered hours? How do you do your morning and afternoon calls? So I do have two questions from what you were saying there. Different sides, go in different ways, but I do have two questions. I might have kids running into the room in a minute as well. Okay. The first one is, what does that day look like? What does that working hybrid look like?
Yeah, I think for us, we have to align ourselves with our customers, and that is one constraint. So our customers' working hours kind of influence ours. It depends on your role within the business. We are a 24/7 business now, so we provide support around the clock because we operate in different markets around the world. So there are times in a week where all parties cross over, so we can have those team stand-ups. I think there are worse places to be in the world to commute into the office, but certainly the hard expectation that you are in the office for 9 o'clock in the morning is certainly something that I see being relaxed. Certainly some of my team members have been investing more in exercising first thing in the morning, and trying to squeeze that in before coming into work and getting up at ridiculous, o'clock in the morning. I don't think that's necessary. As long as they're in the business, in AM, then I don't think there is that pressure to be in on the dot 9 o'clock, on the phone. Our clients don't expect that. We have support teams to, in the background to support that. So, in terms of working hours, there's certainly flex on start time, end times. For us, you're right, there has to be that crossover to ensure that we have that, cohesive communications at key points. But yeah, I don't think it needs to be any more robust than that, as long as they're, aligned with our customer expectations.
And what about, this is the other prong, that team building piece? What about the conversations across the tables?
Yeah, I think, so it's, as a business, we just have to take a view on. Sorry.
Well, I was just going to say, I think that it might, if we have this sort of hybrid model, I personally, from conversations I had previously, we might see a big demand on the more experienced people, because you have that trust piece that you mentioned earlier, but also you just don't need that over the shoulder, because you don't have that across the table conversation. You don't have that ability to enlighten and also learn yourself. You don't have that dynamic. It's gone.
I think it is a key consideration. It depends entirely on the makeup of your business. If that's how your shadowing essentially is a key part of your L&D, then you need to buddy people up, and there needs to be perhaps more structure for some people within the business. Equally, you may need to. I talked earlier about sort of focusing comms, but set aside specific time to play catch up on those elements, to kind of have those weekly fixed in periods with those key members of staff that they normally would have been shadowing. TBC, I think is the response on that. It's something to be aware of.
Because we're obviously a very creative. Well, we are a creative agency, so that's kind of the name of the game, and the atmosphere you have in an office, that feeling of where you can share ideas, and it's good for people in our walk of life. And how we're going to have that now, it doesn't work the same when you're on digital. It doesn't work. You're just looking at 5 faces and they're all just, they haven't got any idea, because to them they're just like they're sat in their living room, or they're not in that mode where they're kind of left it at the door, and now they're in that blank canvas creative mindset. But at the same time, some people are really enjoying that. So it is going to be interesting to see what happens in the future.
I think there's some good. I mean, we are we're heavy users of Slack, or which is the business equivalent to WhatsApp. There's some really great technologies about sort of collaborative whiteboarding. I think there's people thinking about it. We don't profess to be experts of it. I'm with you, Christian. There is still something missing, and if you and it has to be that what you get when you're sat across from me is that immediacy. Or someone picks up on the conversations they're walking past, chews over it while they're making a coffee, and comes back and goes, "Oh, have you thought about this?" You do miss some of that. But yeah, certainly there are some technologies that are looking at how they can collaborate better.
Normally we end these sort of interviews, because I've just realised I haven't even said hello to anybody yet. We've got all these people waving. Hi Samantha, hi Catherine, hi Toby, hi Lauren, hi Dave. Tobias has asked, what do you think will be your biggest challenge once you're able to get the team back into the office full time?
I don't know. I kind of think there's going to be a dip in motivation again. So I think that the team now are really highly motivated by, certainly the more junior members of staff who've been given this freedom and had the opportunity to step up and prove themselves. I think that sort of integration back into whatever structure that is, whether it's a hybrid structure or back to business as we knew it before, hopefully that will be exciting, a prospect, but equally, it could disrupt business for us. So I think the challenge, the bigger business challenge is obviously the trading conditions that we're coming back to. If we need that certainty for everyone in the team to have the confidence that we're going to be back on track to achieve our aspirations. So yeah, I think having confidence, having the motivation, the buy-in to the next chapter is going to be the biggest challenge or issue for us.
Yeah, I agree. I also think that there's something people aren't considering necessarily, which in the world I come from, in a very reactive, media focused world, you're in high stress environments and you're up against it all the time. And when people tend to take a holiday, we used to have a term for sort of the week after they came back where they weren't in the zone, I don't know what the term is, but it was a term. It was like, everybody knew the term, and it was like an in-house joke between us all, various teams, of when you came back off your holiday. Now, you imagine the people that are furloughed at the moment, and they're all going to come back at the same time, and we're going to have that holiday syndrome. For people are going to have to remember how to work. They're going to have to remember how to be in an office. They're going to have to remember not to be tapping their fingers on the table or banging their foot against their desk leg. All those little quirks that you pick up that's going to annoy the person next to you. And on top of that, they're going to need a culture piece. They're going to need to be brought back into the fold. They're going to need to be reminded what it is they do, what their culture is of that business, if you like. I do think there's going to be a lot of team building, and that that team functionality piece is going to be questioned quite a lot as we come back out of this.
I think from our perspective, there has been an increased level of transparency as what the business is doing, to counter the challenging sort of conditions that we're working in, how we're securing their employment, all of those things. And I think we need to maintain that. It's been a real positive for us in having that open book. But there was kind of boundaries in the office where there was conversations being had in meeting rooms with specific people, where it's been a lot more open. And I think as a business, we need to adjust to that. The team have responded very positively to that. So yeah, there's certain things that both they've been doing and we've been doing, and we should continue doing. But you're right, it is going to be that period of adjustment, and I would anticipate that there will be a slight dip, and especially for those that have been furloughed, getting back into the swing of things is going to be a challenge for them.
Yeah, and by the way, when I'm talking about that holiday mode, I'm not implying they've been on holiday. When you come back and you haven't been working for a week, it has an impact. So coming back after not being able to work, and on that as well, do you think there's going to be any of the how do you think people are going to be doing mentally and with their mental health around this now, especially those poor people that are in this awful limbo? Us who are still working day by day, we're in this limbo of kind of when's lockdown ending and when can we get back out there. But the people that are in furlough are in limbo of whether or not they, because of all the crazy news and headlines and all these low the tide sort of stuff, they're in this real predicament of whether they're going to have a job going back in their mind. So how do you think that?
I think that's probably the biggest, going to be one of the biggest challenges. Is getting. It's a bit. Yeah, I spoke to a business, a couple of businesses now that have been doing. They took it upon themselves to do wellness calls, so checking in with staff that have been furloughed, and going through a kind of like the keep in touch days that you'd associate with staff members that are on maternity, which has been a nice initiative that the employers have been, we're still thinking about you, how are you doing, and providing the the right support for those that are struggling. It's a little bit harder for me to process, because we are working, and that has been a great distraction. I think I'd be climbing the walls if I didn't have that. It is something to be certainly to be mindful of, and I think that whole phasing process to how we structure our office environment, and maintain safety. We need to be mindful on when people are going to be ready to be back to work to their full ability, and checking in where they're at when they come back into work, and how far off they are from where they need to be. I think that's just the nature of what we've been through, and the uncertainty they've been presented with.
And I think those people are going to need a bit of space. I know we're going to need to come straight back into work, and like we joke about the holiday syndrome thing, but people are going to have that, and they're going to come back where they haven't had a tranquil time like you would have done on holiday. They've been in a very heightened sense of anxiety potentially, and then they're going to come back and be very aware that of any small mistake they make or anything like that. So we need to give them time, and we need to be respectful of that, while also being aware that we need to get the ball rolling again.
I think the really important message that I've seen come out is that they're not alone. I think that while we talk about this as being people are isolated, they are isolated, but I think a lot of people were isolated before, and a lot of certainly celebrities have been quite vocal in how they're dealing with this situation mentally. And I think that's a great thing, opening up the conversation, raising the awareness, certainly business leaders, putting interventions in place to support their employees, are again, positives that are coming out of this.
Yeah, and there are a lot. I mean, we've touched on a fair few of the positives, but looking towards now, because we've been on 40 minutes, we often, say that we'll keep you longer than 40 minutes. But if we look at to wrap up, we look at some of the positives. We touched on a lot. I don't know if you want to tell us some of the positives you think are going to be out there on the whole, and also specifically for your industry.
Yeah, so I think, for our industry specifically, the recruitment industry I believe, has changed, or certainly the landscape on how we do things, and this probably extends to business and communications within business, has changed forever. I believe while in-person sort of interactions, are a critical part of the mix, I think this has been a catalyst for people getting behind new mediums of communication, be that Zoom or be that webinars or any sort of video-based medium. People have been forced to grow comfortable with that and have realized the benefits of that richer communication. So I think the recruitment landscape has changed. I think businesses that we work with will be looking to, the idea that candidates couldn't be recruited in person, or couldn't be recruited without some sort of in-person element was rubbished sort of pre-COVID. Certainly the businesses that we work with now, they're looking to build an entirely virtual sort of recruitment process where candidates can apply at any time to be part of a talent pool. They can record sort of elevator pitches of themselves. They can be put in front of the hiring managers. Hiring managers can jump on a Zoom call, and they can make offers based on the performance in those, which is, it's going to be transformational in the time it takes, a business to acquire talent, which I think's really positive for us and for those that might have been displaced by this event. I think more positively and more broader outside of our industry, an event like this has given us the opportunity to come up for air. And I think for many business leaders to come up for air and really think about how we can lay the foundations for the next 12 months, 24 months. We don't often get that. This is kind of a unique opportunity we've had to speak to people more than we normally would be able to, because we don't have the usual noise of the treadmill running, and really, set ourselves on our vision, on our path, lay those foundations. So, I think there's going to be a lot of innovation that's going to come off the back of this, which is going to help strengthen the economy.
I love that you mentioned the treadmill there, because I was going to say it earlier. I think it's definitely provided that, everybody's had that whoa moment. They've just been able to stop, take stock, understand where we are. It's just kind of put it's almost like an actual break rather than, just going through the day-to-day tasks. Right, what needs done this week? Bang, 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 constantly. And sometimes never seeing the wood for the trees. And this has just allowed us to kind of go, whoa, take stock of what matters, as well, as you were saying earlier, but also take stock of the business. Where is this really going? We've slowed down a little bit. Let's utilize this properly, because now our heads have cleared a little bit, because it's not constant. Everybody's in the same boat. Everybody's kind of doing the same thing. It's really interesting. I mean, there's two things that I know I should let you go really now, but there's two things that I want to come up with from that. There's the one that I said with the air, that moment. The other thing, just finally, is when you talk about the ability to be able to give somebody a job digitally now, what's the word? Employ somebody digitally. I had a brain freeze on employ, brain block and employ. And we're talking about this new way of these hybrid working days happening, and we're talking about no more offices. So do you think this is a truly global horizon we're looking at here, where you might have an accountancy firm that's only got 4 people in it? You're based in Basingstoke, but your 4 people, your main man's based in Basingstoke, your other guy's in Nigeria. You could break it down on a global level with this hybrid model and literally find the best talent out there globally to suit your budget and suit your time frame and suit whatever it may be. Maybe this is the true beginning of something global.
I hope so. I really do, because I suppose we're some way already on that journey with having a distributed team. We have team members overseas already, but if you think about that, that's really exciting. This idea that we're not limited by geography, geography which is dictated to us by where our office is based, allows us to tap into talent around the world. That we've now established the means of communicating, the means of managing those people. Why shouldn't we set ourselves, our sights on, having a distributed team, and tapping into those sources of talent which perhaps aren't as competitive, there are hotspots all around the world as to where people are that can help you in your business. I think geography was a key part of, limiting that sort of reach.
Yeah, and obviously the multinationals and the big companies have been doing that for a long time, but it's often required some sort of relocation. But Fred in Basingstoke with his little accountancy firm, it's never really been available to them, but they might see this evolution where, I don't know, maybe I'm putting the idea out there now for a global job sort of website, an eBay for job roles on the global where there's my accountant in this price range at this hourly rate, who I don't mind chatting to at 1 a.m. in the morning UK time. They already exist to that level, but they tend to be for specific.
They're more project based. I'm thinking of your Fivers, which have kind of evolved from task platforms to job platforms. But hopefully that's what comes out of the back of this, is that we think broader than domestic hires. It's obviously business dependent. We've got to be aware that some businesses, you're required to be hands-on with, physical, assets to be able to perform your role. But there are many businesses, and increasingly, we're moving towards a world where it's predominantly online. And as long as the language barrier, language isn't a barrier, then I don't think geography should be.
No, certainly. Just finally, I promise this is the last question now from Lauren. It's great you've had some reflection time. Has this changed your business vision?
Yeah, I think certainly not our goal as a business and the markets that we operate. I think the vision for the business. So, in terms of what I need the business to be, what my staff members need the business to be, has changed. I think that reflection time has highlighted some things, some qualities that we're missing. We've got to recognize that while there's all this negativity, it's enabled some people to spend more quality time with family, and for me certainly that's critically important. Some people want quite the opposite. We have to recognize that, but providing the options for that flexibility so people can choose how they can spend their time. I heard a comment the other day about work-life balance. I think it was a Richard Branson quote or something, saying you kind of had to make this pick between it's either work or life. Well, it isn't. It's just life, and being able to shape that life and not have it kind of the constraints dictated to you by an employer is kind of the recognition. We want to be a great place for our employees. And we recognize that having those kind of rigid structures doesn't necessarily deliver everything that it needs to for our clients. That they need more flexibility. So
it's interesting, just to wrap up on that, because we obviously, I've worked with a lot of freelancers in our time. We still work with freelancers now. And freelancers often, when I ask them why do you do it, often it's they want to control their own destiny. They want to be in charge of their own time. If they're there in the morning and it suddenly starts snowing, they want to be able to just go outside and stick their tongue in the air and let the snowflakes fall on it. That's sort of like, and I think we're going to see a lot more of that. I think, especially if we do see these hybrids coming in, these hybrid work days, then people can pick and choose. And as a result of what they're doing throughout the day, and as a result, I think that's just going to make happier people, right?
Happier people, happier businesses. Yeah, I think that's key. If you've got a happy workforce, a lot of the other problems tend to disappear. So
yeah, true. Well, thank you very much. I am going to let you go for definite now. If we can get some love hearts for David, that would be lovely. David, all of the evening so far. It's been amazing insight. Really appreciate you coming on, David, and hopefully we can do something again with you another time in the coming weeks.
Excellent. No, I've really enjoyed it. Thank you very much for the invite.
Well, thank you. And thank you, everybody. Have a lovely evening. Take care. Bye.